G'day mate, 40 here, looking out at beautiful Sydney Harbour on the walk from Manly to Spit Bridge, and there's something I find amusing and disconcerting about many dissident right ideologues is not their ignorance of religion and Christianity, but their lack of awareness of their ignorance of religion and Christianity. Particularly among Nietzscheans like Richard Spencer, or I was just listening to this guy Sosa on Alex Kashuta's podcast, and said just because you were raised Christian, right, just because you went to church on a regular basis doesn't mean that you have any deep understanding of religion. And if you're not currently religious, if we're not going to discuss religion in terms of religious faith, then we have to discuss religion in naturalistic terms, okay, meaning that it is a subset of culture, and that it is a subset of culture that hundreds of millions of people have found adaptive, right? It's helped them deal with the exigencies of life, and it helps them essentially to adapt to the complications and difficulties of life. But then you get these Nietzscheans like Richard Spencer and Mark Brahman, and then this guy Soso Chernyaloshka, right, making these very confident assertions like the following. So here we go.
I just don't think that's accurate. I think that's been tried before too, like particularly in like the
okay. So he has these critiques of Christianity here.
I sort of amplify the point that I'm making for dramatic effect. It's not necessarily that the points aren't genuine. They are genuine. These are the things I believe, but I do sort of dial it up. I had a very good discussion with Gio on exactly this topic in the matters of how religion is going to play a factor in the dissident right. And I think it kind of goes back to what you were saying earlier, is that there's...
So the alt-right is overwhelmingly a secular movement, all right? Almost all important thinkers in the dissident right are secular, all right? And even the one prominent exception, Andrew Fraser, all right, for him it's a political organizing principle. Now, I'm not sure he actually believes in anything supernatural or transcendent. So even if most people in the movement are religious, the movement is overwhelmingly a secular atheist movement.
So many different spheres, there's so many different little cliques and strains of thought that exist in this broader tent that I don't think it's good.
No, there aren't. It's overwhelmingly an atheist movement, and to the extent that religion is invoked by the leading thinkers in the movement, such as by Drew Fraser, it's in service of political, cultural goals. It's not because you get any sense that they actually believe in anything transcendent. So no, there aren't all these tents. Virtually every important thinker in the alt-right is an atheist.
For there to be a single idea that wins out. Because I think there's a lot of points that each clique brings forward that are worth analyzing and sort of internalizing across the board. My problem, particularly when it came to certain people who were very adamantly religious, particularly Christian, like I was raised Christian, like I've got no problem with Christianity in and of itself, but it's people that think that that's sort of an end-all be-all political solution. I just don't think that's...
Okay, so who thinks that that's an end-all and be-all political solution? Like he's just summoning up a straw man. So when we have a rise of, say, religious nationalism, that's a response to an increasingly secular world where people have to be extra fervent and just swim desperately against the current just to stay in place, right? So the people who are Christian nationalists today, they wouldn't have been Christian nationalists 50 years ago. There'd be no such thing as Christian nationalism, right? We only get Christian nationalism because of the triumph of secularism. So let me play a little bit more here from Sosa.
Accurate. I think that's been tried before too, like particularly in like the 70s and the 80s with the religious right, the evangelicals in America and their sort of attempts to make Christianity into this political force. I think not only is that not effective politically, but I also think that's a little disingenuous in terms of theology. Like obviously.
Yeah, does he actually know anything about Christian theology? Right, he's coming from a naturalistic perspective, which is fine, something wrong with that. But he's treating Christian theology as though it's an essential unchanging part of Christianity, when Christian theology changes with times and places, right? It's an adaptive from a naturalistic perspective. Christian, Jewish, Islamic philosophy are adaptations to changing circumstances. It's not an eternal, Platonic essence. So you'd think you'd have a little more sophistication here.
Christianity is so much bigger than just politics. It's a belief system. It's a matter of faith.
Right, and he thinks that he's the first person to realize this, that the people on the Christian right who are organizing, they didn't have the gift of his insight and his brilliance, that people like Jerry Falwell just thought Christianity was just solely politics.
And that's going to obviously inform people's political views, but to use it as a tool for cynical political gain, I think is both ineffective for politics, and I think it's disingenuous for theology. Now,
so it's disingenuous for theology if people try to create an environment that is more compatible with their thriving. Like every biological organism tries to create an environment that is most conducive to its thriving, right? This is true for Christians, for Jews, for Muslims, right? It's true for every group, every form of life does this, right? And this is like some cynical, grasping, exceptional thing that's just incompatible with Christianity. Is just so incredibly naive. Like, why would Christians not want to create an environment, a country, a community, a state that is most conducive to their thriving, right? Birds do it, bees do it. Why would Christians not do this? And there's no, eternal, essential Christian theology. There's no, eternal, essential Platonic essence of Christian theology that would forbid this, right? Does you really think that the true Christian just completely steps aside from politics, that he doesn't bring his Christianity to politics, that somehow politics is just this gritty, earthy, dirty realm which should not be touched or affected by Christianity?
Or cynical political gain, I think is
so every other people should naturally fight for gain. Like every living organism, fights for its life, fights to propagate, fights for gain, fights to create a particular type of society. But Christians should be the one essential group, right? There's just something essential about their Christianity where this is, just incompatible with their eternal essential beliefs. Why would not Christians do this along with everyone else?
And wiped out for, perpetual maidenhood, looking like some weird, Madonna.
G'day, mate 40 here, listening to Soso Chernyashka talking on Alex Kashuta's podcast about how he thinks Christians should not allow their pristine, essential, eternal, Platonic, essence of Christianity, not allow it to be tarnished by tawdry, earthly, political things. Everyone else should fight for their self-interest, but not Christians.
Done a lot of work and is really good at is using aesthetics to demonstrate just how...
That's not the timestamp. Bloody heck. Okay, here we go.
Moving forward for different nationalist movements, different components of the dissident right. That's good. Like, tradition obviously is very important, and I think you shouldn't sort of have...
Yeah, it sounds somewhat paternalistic. Is that just me? Like he's above these things? When he's saying they're good, it's like someone who studies insects and says, you're all very interesting.
There's a lot of people that take it too far, I think. They are very...
What's taking it too far? Okay, can you take what you're doing too far? Like, why is this one category of life something that people, should really watch out for taking too far? Everything else, exercise, politics, philosophy, go for the gusto. But when it comes to this one thing, don't take that too far.
I think Christianity or any religion in general has no place in dissident politics, because
Why? Like, you're just going to take a naturalistic view. It's a subset of culture, and why would you expect that culture should not have any place in this discussion?
There's a lot of things that you could argue are problems in this world that sort of stem out of a Christian perspective, a sense of universalism or egalitarianism, this idea that all men are equal before God.
Right, and again, he's taking this idea of like theological essential truths of Christianity, that they're just a certain key doctrines that are just, essential to the religion, and they don't change in time and place and history. But of course, any form of theology is developed by one man or one school, which is operating in a certain time and a certain place, responding to certain pressures, and is it trying to accomplish some comfort and give an adaptive evolutionary advantage to its believers.
Can be taken to an extreme politically and socially that I don't think is true of Christianity in general. Like, there's been plenty of very stout nationalist Christians who are both eagerly nationalist and eagerly Christian, but certainly you can look on the flip side and see that in many cases the left has used Christianity as a mechanism or a vehicle to spread like Marxist ideology.
Yeah, well, so what? Anything can be perverted. Okay, anything can be misused. So water can be misused. You can drink too much water, right? So you really need to go around telling people, oh, got to watch out, water can be misused.
In terms of egalitarianism, it's great for that point. And I think that
egalitarianism isn't some essential, eternal essence, the fulcrum of Christianity. It's just one component, right? It's there in nationalism as well, right? Nationalism is inherently egalitarian because you're all members of a nation together. So do you want to dismiss nationalism because it has an inherent egalitarian component? Now, how intense, how strong, how dominant this egalitarian component of nationalism is expressed would depend on time, place, the particular people, the circumstances, right? Just like with theology. So he wants to say, oh, can't take Christianity too seriously, too far, too intensely, because it's got this component of egalitarianism. But nationalism has the very same component, right? Or nationalist thought inherently has an egalitarian element to it, because you're all members of a people, which is just an extended family.
Or a vehicle to spread like Marxist ideology in terms of egalitarianism. It's great for that point. And I think
so he thinks egalitarianism is something that's inherent to Marxist ideology, right? Egalitarianism is inherent in tribal identity, in national identity, in all sorts of different identities. It's not just something unique to Marxism.
That's not without reason. I think there are things that can be used with Christianity, maybe maliciously or maybe even with the best of intentions, to push certain political and social ideas that are detrimental to the health of the nation. So that's
whatever Christianity is pushing. All right, first of all, there's no such thing as Christianity, period. Christianity is a subset of culture in a particular time and place. So different Christians have different understandings about what it means to be Christian, even when they're located in the same time and the same place and responding to the same incentives. So Christianity is not really much of a unitary thing. There are different Christianities, there are different forms of Judaism, there are different forms of nationalism. Would you say that, all nationalisms, they're just the same? They have this eternal Platonic essence?
In a nutshell, I think that's sort of where my issues with people that view Christianity as like the singular most important factor of dissident right politics is that it's not actually all the answers rolled up into one.
Yeah,
Wow, what a devastating critique. He doesn't think that Christianity answers all problems in the world. Like, everyone gets enthusiastic about something. Intellectuals tend to get enthusiastic about some aspect of culture. And guess what? It turns out that the 1, 2, 3, 7 things that we're most enthusiastic about aren't the whole story. Well, that's amazing. Who would have thought that it's not the whole story? G'day mate, 40 here, doing the gorgeous Manly to Spitbridge walk and listening to some twaddle on Alex Kashuta's podcast. So her guest is Soso Chernyayoshka.
You just come a lot of our sphere and
Okay.
Just by anchoring.
Come on.
You haven't.
Let me find the right
In a
time
nutshell, I
span.
think that's sort of where my issues with people that view Christianity as like the singular most important factor of dissident right politics is that it's
Okay, there aren't any intellectuals who view Christianity as the singular most important factor in dissident right politics. I mean, Nick Fuentes may use that rhetoric, but there's nothing he says that shows he's got any grounding as a scholar of Christianity or theologian. I mean, no one is saying the things that Sosa is fighting against here. Right? Christian nationalists aren't saying that. Right? They're not saying, oh, this is the be-all and end-all. That's all there is to it. There's nothing else that we need to investigate. We just have to look into the book. We'll get all the answers. No one says this.
it's not actually all the answers rolled up into one.
Well, gosh. I've known hundreds of religious people in my life. Nobody's ever claimed that religion is all the answers rolled up into one. Just great job here, Sosa Chernyayoshka, destroying a straw man. An incredibly powerful point. Like, who would have ever realized these insights if you hadn't come along and provided them? Just absolutely devastating to a point of view that has never been expressed by anyone intelligent.
Yeah, I also am slowly coming to that conclusion in the sense that I
She's slowly coming to the conclusion that Christianity isn't the be-all and end-all. God, I love these beautiful red gum trees. Right? So until now, she thought Christianity was the be-all and end-all and had the answer to all questions. I don't think so.
thought a little bit about the appeal of something like integralism, just in the sense of, okay, you have an external moral framework, it's inerrant, it's based in some external observer, and then just...
Yeah, you cannot have objective morality unless you have a transcendent source of morality. So there's a pretty good case to be made for the importance of having a transcendent source of morality, because then it becomes objective. There's objective good and evil. So if you can tie it into a divine revelation, yeah, you'd think you'd have a lot of advantages.
By anchoring into something, you essentially can build a more solid structure around it. I don't think that's possible. I don't think necessarily religion is something that translates into politics in any good way. You won't have...
Well, why? I mean, can soccer moms translate into politics? Can art translate into politics? Can podcasting translate into politics? If everything else can have a political dimension, why can't religion? The essence of politics, as Carl Schmitt pointed out, is the friend-enemy distinction. And so the friend-enemy distinction can absolutely divide up on religious grounds. Some circumstances, that is the essence of the friend-enemy distinction. So I don't see how you can claim, oh, this should be separate from politics. It obviously has not been throughout history.
Politics, and you won't have good religion if you marry the two. And
Oh, you won't have good politics and good religion if you marry the two. Well, sometimes, in some circumstances, this subset of culture does become essential to the friend-enemy distinction. And whether or not you think that's good, that is the nature of reality. Right? So you just want to talk from a naturalistic, humanistic perspective, then religion is a subset of culture that aims to provide comfort to people, and it provides identity in an in-group, and in-groups are explosively, possibly political. So, why should this one aspect of life, never have a political expression? I mean, of course it's going to have a political expression at certain times and certain circumstances. And there's no Platonic, ideal of good politics or good religion, right? They're just various adaptations to a complicated, painful, and difficult world.
Is something that translates into politics in any good way. You won't have good politics and you won't have good religion if you...
Well, the conservative political parties of Europe are basically Christian Democrats, right? They have some grounding in a traditional conception of life and moderately free markets, and that seems to have worked for well over 100 years in Europe. So just because America has this ideal that church and state should be separate doesn't mean that that's right for everyone in all circumstances.
You marry the two, and it should be, I think, for people in our sphere in general, it should be a matter of personal commitments, and nothing that that flows into politics, because it does ignore a lot of very.
Oh, religion should just be personal. All right, so I mean, I'm guessing she's just been exposed to a particular type of religion that is just personal faith, but religion is something that is lived by human bodies, right? Bodies that lust, bodies that hate, bodies that fear, bodies that see threats to its survival, bodies that organize with other bodies in communities. Like, you just can't have religion purely separate from the political and the social and the cultural.
Important elements, like, for example, immigration. Like under a Christian system, you just come in, you say the appropriate words, and you make the appropriate commitments, honestly or dishonestly, and then politically, even you become a sort of de facto citizen of the.
Oh, so which Christian nationalist groups advocate this? I'm not aware of any who do. All the Christian nationalist groups of which I'm aware want immigration restriction. So Christianity was married to nationalism for hundreds of years, right up until the 19th century. It was also married to a specific sense of people and race, right? So Christianity marched hand in hand along with strong racial and national identity up until about the 18th, 19th century. And then the mainstream of Christianity started diverging, moving in more egalitarian and universalist tendencies. But that's the product of a particular time and place. It's not, just some essential, unchanging, eternal essence of Christianity. Sometimes Christianity is a force for racism, sometimes it's not. Sometimes Christianity is a valuable aid for national identity, sometimes it's not. Depends on time and place.
You make the appropriate commitments, honestly or dishonestly, and then politically, even you become a sort of de facto citizen of the new system. There's no reason to exclude anyone or to have any sort of ranking or hierarchy or preference system if the baseline is okay. Do you accept, the Lord X or Y, depending on what your religious system is? So yeah, I think that's a really big blind spot.
Yeah, I think.
Oh, that's a big blind spot by Christians who are interested in the wider society around them. And it's a blind spot that they've never thought of it before. Like until Alex Kashuta brought it up and Sosa Chernyashka, it never occurred to them. Do you Christian nationalists realize that? You've got this giant blind spot, and now it's being exposed by Alex Kashuta and Sosa Chernyashka. They just exposed this blind spot. They're presenting ideas and analyses here and critiques that you've never heard of before. This is amazing stuff.
It's also curious too, is if you look at certain organizations that have been the loudest proponents of immigration, particularly in America, more often than not, they're Christian charities. And I can empathize with the idea of helping, the meek and the poor, but
yeah, sometimes Christianity has been a force for immigration restriction and racial and national identity, and sometimes it's been for diluting that and creating a more universalist and egalitarian and non-racial identity. Depends upon time and place, like everything else.
At the expense of what, right? At the expense of the nation, the health of the nation, and the good of the general population, our people, so to speak. It's it's a sort of suicidal altruism. And I think above all else, you have to sort of look out for your own before you start worrying about matters of charity and alms and that sort of thing.
Yeah, and that's never occurred to Christians. Right? This is just some blind spot, right? I don't think there are many Christians who regard Christianity as a suicide pact, right? Most Christians do not engage in their religion with the understanding that it will mean, the end of everything that they hold sacred.
And yeah, exactly what you said. It doesn't have all the answers, and particularly when it comes to matters of race and the composition of a nation.
Yeah, because Christians, they've never thought about race. When did you ever hear a Christian talk about race? Christians never thought about the composition of a nation, never occurred to them before, right? That's absolute nonsense. Christianity went hand in hand for hundreds and hundreds of years with strong racial and national identity. Right? These guys have no sense of historicism.